Hi, I'm your host, Rowan Tonkin, and welcome to Being Planful, the show for FP&A leaders and planning experts. Hi everyone, welcome to the Being Planful podcast. I'm joined here today by Keith Kim. Keith has just joined us here at Planful as our new VP of FP&A. And firstly, welcome to the team, Keith, and welcome to the Being Planful show.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Rowan. Super excited to be here at the company and also to have this opportunity to chat.
So when we spoke earlier about jumping on the podcast and talking about some of your experiences before me and the rest of the marketing team come and brainwash you with all of our ideologies and thoughts and have you really speaking from the right sheet. What we talked about was just kind of your career so far. You know, what was you have had an interesting journey so far, going from investment banking into FP&A and really FP&A at some really amazing firms. EMC, Salesforce, LinkedIn, Zendesk. I'd love to firstly, dive into that jump from kind of corporate development and investment banking into FP&A and what kind of correlations you see and just understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the question. So, yeah, you're right. I started out my career in investment banking, did that for about 4 years, doing primarily, sell side and buy side M&A for small to mid cap companies, primarily, private companies. And so, very, very transactions heavy, but also learned what it was like to work 80 hours a week deep in the trenches, right out of college, drank out of the fire hose. It was an immensely, exciting experience having had that. What really kind of, transitioned to, subsequent roles really was, I wanted to just see that end-to-end process within a company. So not just going from one deal to the next, but really to see the end-to-end life cycle of a transaction from diligence all the way through integration. And so there was an opportunity that came up for me to join EMC on the corp dev team. EMC at the time was super acquisitive. And so, not only did I get to continue participating on the front end of the deal transactions, but really seeing what goes on behind the scenes after the announcement, after the deal has closed, and how you live and support the acquisition going forward. And so that was for a couple of years, and there's a role that opened up on the finance side, FP&A side, partnering with the product and engineering managers. And given I was already working with them quite heavily for a lot of these acquisitions, it just seemed to be a pretty natural fit to move into that role and now become their finance partner. And so that was my transition into FP&A, and haven't looked back since. And served in an FP&A capacity across some really stellar companies that I was very fortunate to have been a part of. Really seen some exciting growth through those companies. And interestingly, as I thought that I would be leaving M&A behind from my corp dev and banking days, I noticed that it kept following me, through my subsequent journeys. And it's really interesting. I mean, what really, those companies have in common is, not just their, how they're able to grow, at scale, but, the fact that they used acquisitions as a catalyst to continue to further fuel that growth. And it just goes to show, how acquisitions needs to become a core competency for companies as they grow.
And that's an interesting point. Would you say that's kind of one of the learnings that you've taken from your M&A time into FP&A is how to help organizations understand, M&A activity as part of kind of core financial activity?
That's right. And, I see my role, at those companies as having a kind of a hybrid role, right? So, you got the traditional, corporate finance role, managing budgets and doing planning and finance partnerships, but also at the same time, participating in diligence and seeing what the impact could be to the business as you are exploring these really exciting technologies and companies. And so this kind of hybrid approach and the skill sets required to be able to flex across those two different dimensions, and they have been very frequent just from my experience. It's they go hand in hand. It's really striking how I've been able to leverage both of those skill sets together within one role.
And what's interesting, Keith, is when I talk to a lot of FP&A teams and leaders, they're like, I'm struggling to do the business partnership side because of my core finance side, and you're adding this third element of M&A on top of that. Can you talk about how you manage to do that while still kind of maintaining and operating under that core finance model?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because of the fact that the traditional corporate finance role is highly predictable. It's very cyclical, right? You go through your month end, quarter end planning. I mean, it's a rhythm, right? M&A just breaks all of that. Okay, and so nothing like a good dose of M&A to just really stress test your company's processes, aptitude for being able to integrate, thinking outside the box, and really stretching the confines of the company's structure and the way they used to do things to be able to jointly, bring along this supercharged company to see how it could really fit nicely and give you that growth. So it takes you out of your comfort zone for sure. And for me, like I'm having had that experience made me very comfortable and used to managing the unpredictable.
Yeah, and when you came across from the banking side, obviously there was a start and an end date, right? As to kind of the processes. What did you learn that was new to you when you come across onto the kind of corp dev FP&A side, on really on the buy side, if you will, that you didn't know walking in? Like, what would anyone in the audience listening today? What can they learn from you that you wish you had have known as you went in?
Yeah, I mean, it was brand new for me to just really understand and embrace the operational aspect of a company, right? So, outside of the M&A stuff, I mean, the company is still having to close the books and, manage the P&L and, figure out how to make the best investment decisions, right? Those are things that I wasn't exposed to during my earlier time in banking. And so it was a brand new experience for me jumping in and really seeing that engine, okay, and that really riding that rhythm of a company's year-long planning and a budgeting journey to be able to see what those existing processes look like, and how to now turn on a dime and to accommodate something as disruptive as an acquisition.
Yeah. And obviously some of those, the companies that you've been working at, they're larger organizations. Like they if I read them off, they're a who's who of kind of tech companies here in the Bay Area: EMC, Salesforce, LinkedIn, Zendesk. So can you tell me a little bit about the structure of those FP&A teams? How did Corp Dev fit into that? Some of those kind of capabilities, I think the audience would be really interested in hearing from.
Yeah. So I guess two things. So each of those companies did have a dedicated corporate development team that included the transaction team, usually a 2 to 3 person team that is out there scoping the M&A landscape, negotiating and talking to potential targets. and building relationships. And then the other aspect of their team was the integration team, and very almost like a PMO kind of organization. And so they would be responsible for coordinating all of the aspects of what happens after the deal closes, when everyone else in the company is now invited to the party. Okay, now who's going to do what? So that's the basic function of a corporate development team. The way I would partner with them is, being on the finance side, I would participate and be the FP&A representative as we assess these companies. So, each of the functions would send along their, dedicated representative to kind of be the one to, scope out a company from, each of the functions that they represent. And I would play that role for finance. And so now, if you look back at the typical FP&A team across these companies, what I would say, they all have in common is, it's a, especially the teams at that scale, at, $1 billion plus scale, that, and growing at that pace. I mean, the teams are big, right? There are very clear swim lanes, processes are tight, right? And in essence, they have to be, right? Because for companies that are billion plus, that are growing, 25, 30% plus, you need to do that in order to mobilize all the cross-functional resources to do what it takes to make or, execute on a decision, right? And so you have finance teams that are now entrenched with each of those business partners, and they're kind of tied at the hip, right? And each of the major executives from the orgs would have a finance partner or finance team supporting them that really knows each of their functions.
That makes 100% sense at that scale. So if you're coming to a smaller organization like you have now, what advice would you give to those companies that are maybe smaller in revenue, smaller in FP&A team, but like what can organizations learn from that scale and that growth and that pace that would be important to kind of start instilling now?
Yeah. I think what's important for smaller teams to realize is, when you're small, you have the luxury of being the one to just roll up your sleeves and take things on, right? You just need consensus from maybe one or two other people, and you could just make things happen. That speed and agility is what makes a smaller company a small company, nimble and agile, quick decision making, and being able to just turn on a dime. However, I think as those companies have bigger aspirations to reach a growth growth target, it behooves them to be aware of what efficient processes they could start to put in place, so that as they grow, they're not laying down debt that they'll have to pay for later, because some of their processes and things are not as efficient as it could be.
And would that be true of companies that maybe don't have such ambitious growth targets, right? Some people are just trying to outperform their competition on razor thin margins. I imagine that's the same philosophy, because then you're still going to want those processes and frameworks to support just being able to operate at such a high performance level without all the needs of human capital in that case.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you have to be efficient with the small amount of resources that you have, and that's table stakes for sure. It's just that if the company is doing well and the company is growing teams, which should be inevitable for a growing organization, the amount of communication and the coordination you need to do across the teams to get alignment, I mean, it just grows exponentially, right? And so the level of communication and the teamwork that you need to just keep them all aligned and going towards the same target, that becomes even more critical, because you're not the one man show anymore, right? I mean, you got to rely on other folks, and you got to trust them now, okay? And and have rely on other folks to look, look around corners or uncover things that you might not have done before. And so, the level of communication and the alignment becomes critical just by virtue of having so many folks involved.
Are there any specific tactics that you learned along your kind of high growth journey that you can share that kind of help achieve that alignment and that that clarity of communication that you can share?
Yeah. Within a finance role, reporting is a key element of our jobs, right? What we surface, to whom and how, and the story around the insights and the numbers and all that, analysis is one of our key deliverables in products.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so um, that product that you are creating as a finance organization has to resonate with your audience, right? Your reporting packages have to have the right product market fit, okay, for the audience that you're dealing with. And so being intentional about what it is you're going to be surfacing and to whom and in what kind of manner and cadence becomes super critical. So whether it's monthly scorecards and dashboards, or things that you could convey to your business partners about, hey, have you looked at this trend? It seems to be going a little bit off. Or just anticipating some of those changes and bringing those insights to your business partners, become really really important. So I would say, just all the basic reporting that finance organizations do, it's something that all the finance teams can really revisit and refine, and because what you've reported last year may not be the relevant report for this year anymore, right? And so sometimes you just have to think outside the box a little bit and really not be and really understand the pulse of that business to change your product, right? Your reporting packages.
Yeah, it comes to the kind of, I think, the adage, it's not reporting, it's insights that people are looking for, and they change on a regular basis based on whatever the needs of the business are. And so, as we think about coming into FY21, and we've obviously that's something that we're all in the process of doing right now. We've got 2020 hopefully behind us. What insights can we derive from 2020 that will help shape FY21 and capabilities that organizations may or may not need?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at 2020, and we still have a couple more months to go here, so we should probably anticipate a little bit more volatility as we exit the year. I think what's a big lessons learned for finance teams is, I mean, things can just turn on a dime, right? The pace at which things can slow and then reaccelerate. I mean, who would have thought that, within a quarter for certain businesses, I mean, they are back to where they were, pre-COVID, right? And so each of the businesses out there right now are dealing with their own kind of sub-reality, because it's impacting them in so many different ways, right? COVID isn't impacting all companies in the same way, right? And companies are seeing the impact of this in a that really shows in a different way than maybe it does to their peers, right? And so this notion of, okay, how do we quickly replan based on these changing conditions becomes so much more critical now, because the quarterly outlooks that we used to do, that was just basically tying back to the original plan, that doesn't work anymore, right? And so you are just trying to ascertain all of the noise coming from company metrics, macroeconomic data, and trying to surface like what is a signal here that we need to latch onto, okay, that is meaningful for us to make the right decision going forward.
Absolutely, that organizational agility is something I think we most organizations strive for, but is now becoming a core competency, if you will, rather than a competitive advantage. Um, are there any other advantages that the smaller finance teams can really can take from this to outperform their competition?
Yeah, yeah. It's by virtue of being small, I mean, you have basically a jack of all trades finance professional within the team, right? And you know, um, you have that really kind of a cross company exposure to things that make you very well rounded as a finance professional, right? And so from a finance team's perspective, you know their exposure is very broad, okay? But then as the company continues to grow, like that experience needs to get deeper, right, within each of those functions.
Mhm.
But then, in terms of, outperforming their peers and competition, at that level, um, it's one thing again to, ride on the coattails of, strong growth now, but really what companies need to prepare for is to be able to grow at scale, right? And not everyone can do that, right? And that's what becomes a big separation when you're a couple hundred million and reaching $1 billion. How do you now do what you used to do very quickly as a small person team, and now start to really prioritize where to increase your resources and to have them focus on what, to make sure that you are focusing the right things.
And so that's kind of a really good segue to your new role here at Planful, right? We're trying to achieve that growth and achieve that same growth at scale. What are the major impact areas that you're looking to have here on our business over the next 12, 24 months?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple points, right? So one, just looking internally within our own finance teams and processes, right? So that's one. I'm always just trying to push the envelope on how much we can streamline things and automate, and to just really you know reduce the clutter of the manual minutia that we do, right? And I know this is something that a lot of finance folks are trying to tackle, but it does really require outside the box thinking to do that, because by nature we're used to doing things the way we've done it before, because maybe our systems didn't give us what we needed, okay? And so we're used to just coming in as human band-aids, right? To fix it, no matter whatever the cost or hours invested. So really trying to optimize the finance processes, whether it's a close cycle or a forecasting or a planning cycle, and to really figure out what opportunities do we have to be able to make more efficient decisions, and to be able to tackle some of the bigger issues that require some more thought. So that's on the finance team side. As relates to the product itself, I mean, this is the product that we live and breathe on a daily basis, right? And so, I am super excited to be engaging with folks on your team on the marketing side, on the product side, about ways to improve the product. It's really exciting for me to just see all the features and things that we have on the roadmap to solve the pain points that finance teams and professionals have today. And some of these issues have been long-standing issues that we just kind of gave up on, right? Because we complained about it in the beginning, but then there was no resolution, and so we just reverted back to just our old habits, right? So it's exciting to just, be engaging, with the product folks on, okay, have you guys thought about this? Or like, here's one way to make it easier for the, finance person to just, do their job, right? And then, lastly, on, customer facing side too, right? Because, I mean, we're selling a financial application, tool, right? But what I've come to realize is, the tool is only half the equation. The other half is if your processes are not aligned with that tool, you're not gonna be at kind of the most optimal level of efficiency, right? And so in some ways, um, it's about improving the way we do things with the tool in hand, right? To really take finance organizations and teams and skill sets to the next level. That's another area that I'm excited about.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's super interesting, and you've joined at a really interesting time, right? You've joined obviously in the middle of well, or 3/4 of the way through 2020, in the midst of an annual planning cycle, in the midst of everyone being pushed remote work. Um, what learnings do you have for anyone that is maybe in job transition right now and looking to start their new role in a very remote way? I know you probably haven't met face to face yet many of your colleagues. What advice as a leader can you give? Can you give those folks?
Yeah, it's really interesting, having been in this mode of work for, maybe the past 7 months or so. Like I would say probably, the first couple of months, yeah, I mean, it was a shell shock for everyone and everyone's got Zoom fatigue and whatever. Uh, I mean, it's really interesting though that for me personally, I mean, over the last, couple of months, and what I've realized was, I think people have really gotten adapted to this, right? Both from a newbie employee perspective, where I'm trying to do face-to-face one-on-ones over Zoom with people, but also the recipient side, and they're used to meeting new folks over Zoom as well. So that sense of a little bit like feeling weird and just kind of odd, like it's mutual, right? But then the thing is, it just goes to show how adaptable we become, right? And it has become almost a new reality where, yeah, you know what? Within these confines, like how do I be more efficient and effective at doing things, right? With communication with teams and making sure that everyone's still fully engaged and it's a different way of working together, but I think people are figuring that out. For me personally, it's been an interesting transition, and I think I've been seeing it work better just over the past couple months.
Yeah, I know. I've had a few people join my team recently, and there's been some new hires that we've had the opportunity to meet face to face in the office, obviously in a social distance capacity. I think the running joke is nobody knows how tall anyone is anymore. You know, one of our new hires said, "I didn't realize how tall everyone was." Now you don't know that over Zoom based on camera angles and things like that. That's been one of the really interesting parts of this whole thing.
And it kind of feels more weird being in an office now sometimes because
Yeah.
like you kind of forgot what it feels like to actually be in an office, like running into people, and it's like even that's feeling a little weird.
Yeah, you normalize with someone's background and their office space, and you're like, well, they're not in their normal compartmentalized view of their world for you, which is always fun. So, Keith, I know it's getting late here in the afternoon, and we want to kind of wrap things up. So I've got a couple more questions for you before we do wrap up. And my first question is, what does being planful mean to you?
Yeah, being planful for me, what that means is being prepared, being intentional, being methodical. And it's somewhat tied into kind of what I was talking about earlier. With COVID and having to replan your business. It's about not just having the playbook memorized, but then as you have that memorized and you have a broken play on the field, like instinctively, like you still kind of know what you need to do with your teammates, right? And so what being prepared to anticipate the changes in the business, and especially of this level of magnitude that we've seen this year, it sets a new bar now, right? So the volatility of our business that was maybe this much before is now expanded, quite a bit wider, and so it's being able to work within that wider range, and being prepared for it.
Absolutely. I think that almost may be the dictionary definition of planful is being methodical and rich in plans. So, and then the final question for you, Keith, right? We're in this annual planning mode now. What's the most exciting part about annual planning for you?
Yeah, appreciate that question. It's interesting. Annual planning, no matter where you go or where you work, it's the same principle, same philosophy, same structure. But it's really the storytelling and the vision and the narrative behind all the numbers that really makes it exciting. Okay, it's less about, okay, what do these numbers say and what is the final budget, but it's all that color, right, that isn't conveyed on a slide with numbers. It's the again, it's the kind of the view. It's this like sketch diagram of what your future could look like if you executed XYZ to hit your goals. And it's almost like a blueprint for your end result, right? And there's so many dynamics within that narrative. Okay. And as the teams have aligned on an annual plan and they all have agreed what the priorities are, and the focus would be there are some elements of risk, right? There's some element of concern about stretch goals, right? And it's being a little bit uncomfortable, okay, about what you're going to sign up for, but knowing that the teams are aligned and they're committed, okay, to hitting those objectives. And the role that finance plays in that is just to make sure everyone is aligned to that same objective. But they all come at it from their own different angles, whichever function they represent. They all understand the part that they play as part of this overall narrative, and seeing that that vision get more clearer as you go through that execution of the plan. That becomes even more exciting. So now you're starting to see the company doing what it set out to achieve, and to see that come to fruition. That's another set of excitement that kind of waits behind closed doors.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I certainly feel that, when we go through annual planning, it's like, wow, we're in this high growth mode, and now I'm signing up for this new big goal. How am I going to make that happen? And then ultimately you go ahead and you organize everyone to achieve it. And that's the fun for me, is that kind of, certainly from my perspective, that high performance team of achieving that, what you thought may have been insurmountable goal, but turns out we can do it.
Yeah.
All right, Keith. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it. I look forward to continuously working with you on our continuous planning over the next few quarters and years ahead. And once again, welcome to the Planful team, and really looking forward to to our relationship on the kind of revenue operations and marketing side.
Appreciate it, Ron. Again, thank you for having me, and very looking forward to our ongoing partnership as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks. Take care.
Make sure you hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for stopping by.